Good morning.
Good morning. Today is September 17th, 2023, and we're so happy you joined us. Our talk today is Love Thy Neighbor as Thyself. What's in it for you? And I'm going to start with an opening affirmative prayer that is from the book 365, which is a book written by our founder, Ernest Holmes, and Dr. Raymond Charles Barker. And this is entitled, The Essence of Love Expresses Through Me as Harmony.
I like that.
And it says, so you may close your eyes if you want to just go within and listen to this prayer. The law of the Lord is perfect, and the law of the Lord is love. You are made perfect in the law when you enter into conscious communion with the love. It is only through love that the law can fulfill itself in your experience, because love harmonizes everything, unifies everything. You can never make the most perfect use of the law of your life unless that use is motivated by love. As the artist, that's you, Bob, as the artist weds himself to beauty, imbibing the essence of the spirit of beauty, that it may be transmitted to the canvas or awaken the cold marble to living form. So you must wed yourself to love. You must imbibe its spirit. This love is more than a sentiment. It is a deep sense of the underlying unity and beauty of all life, the goodness running through everything, the givingness of life to everything. So say this to yourself as I repeat this affirmative prayer. Today, I bestow the essence of love upon everything. Everyone shall be lovely to me. My soul meets the soul of the universe in everyone. Everything is beautiful, including everything is meaningful. This love is a healing power, touching everything into wholeness, healing the wounds of experience with its divine balm. I know that this love essence is the very substance of life, the creative principle back of everything, flowing through my whole being, spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. It flows in transcendent loveliness into my world of thought and form, ever renewing, vitalizing, bringing joy, harmony, and blessing to everything and everyone it touches.
That's beautiful.
Amen. And so it is. So, of course, what we're referring to is the statement by Jesus when the disciples were asking him, which is the greatest law of all? Because the Jewish community had so many laws. They had laws about how to eat, how to dress, everything, and they said they had so many laws. A good Jew could not obey all the laws in a single day. So they were destined to end up breaking some laws. So they were asking, what's the most important law? And Jesus's answer, and I'm paraphrasing, said, there are only two. There are only two main laws. The first is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul. And the second is equal unto it, which is love thy neighbor as thyself. So that has always been our challenge. That has always been our challenge as human beings, because it's easy for us to love God because we idealize God. God is perfect. God is good. God is love. How can you not love God? That's easy. It's our neighbor we have trouble with. With one another, we have trouble loving them. And I think that comes out of, for one thing, our tribal history. It was always us against them. For safety purposes, we only could trust the people in our tribe. And so there was always suspicious if you were outside the tribe, oh, you might want to do us harm. And of course, and human nature with our constant wars and whatnot, it was easy to fear our neighbor. So if you fear your neighbor, you don't trust them, much less love them. So how in the world are we to do that? I had one more quote I wanted to read, which was in Galatians, which means that the area of Galatia, there were communities and early churches, and this is where the writings come from. And it says in Galatians 5:13, "For you are called to freedom, brothers and sisters, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become servants to one another. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself."
And and therein lies the first rub. The first rub is that many people actually don't love themselves. And in fact, one of the dilemmas people often have is they don't even like themselves. Many people are long distance fast runners to try to stay ahead of how much they dislike themselves.
Mhm.
And so if you don't like you and you don't love you, it's very hard to extend that kind of not loving to loving someone else or loving something else. So what I see very often in my daily life is the people who like themselves the very least are very critical of everyone else. And that criticalness is not really making them wrong as much as maintaining the distance that they need to maintain so that they're not overwhelmed with feeling anything at all. Because if they get in touch with how they feel, it's not very good. They don't like themselves. So one of the things we've often done, unfortunately, to protect ourselves is to find fault with other people rather than to see the log in our own eye, as said in the Bible. And so that's the first rub is could we at least be kind to ourselves? Could we, if we're not nice to ourselves, could we be neutral? The more we're able to do that, the more we're able to forgive. And for me, forgiveness means saying something that I think is really very fundamental to letting go of the past, and that is, I always did the best I could given what I knew and what I believed at the time. I know now better. I now believe things that are different than I believed a long time ago. So I am not likely and I'm not willing to make the same mistakes because at the time that I made those mistakes or I did the things that I did, I didn't know to do it another way and think that that way would work or that that way would be successful. And so if we can allow ourselves the privilege of hindsight without judgment, but hindsight that allows us to say, I can now be alive fully and completely. One of the things that many different denominations preach and teach, which we don't, is some sort of a forgiveness model. If you're a Catholic, you would repent, you would go to the priest and you would say what was wrong that you'd done, and you would be forgiven. And it speaks to the issue of it's how difficult it is to forgive ourselves, how difficult it is to let go of. In fact, we can't let go of. We have to have somebody else stand in for us often, and say it's okay. You can start over now. And we often don't believe it and we don't allow it. And so the first step in loving your neighbor is allowing yourself to love you, to give yourself permission to at least like you or not be hostile toward yourself. And then the second step of that, of course, is could you love others? What's in it for you? That's a really good question. And I want to answer that first off before I give it back to Judith. With some research that was done, interestingly, with wolves. And they found that the wolves that hung out with human beings, that is, they showed a kindness towards humans. They showed a willingness to trust humans, to get to know humans, because, of course, it benefited them. What was in it for them? Some scrap food. What was in it for them was some protection and from the wilderness. What happened eventually is those wolves became the dogs we now know. And the dogs that we now know have flourished and have succeeded far better than the wolves in the wild. And the reason for that, and this is where the research gets really interesting, is because the old model of the strong and the fit will survive, you stand alone, you fight, and you will make it, doesn't actually hold water if we look at the research. The research suggests that the creatures and the humans and the species that have lasted and done the best are the ones who had the greatest amount of friendliness. Think about that. Being friendly toward your enemy, that doesn't mean inviting them for dinner, but it means not approaching your enemy with a sword, but approaching your enemy with kindness, allowing your enemy not to be your enemy in every area of life, but just in the one areas that are dangerous to you. That kindness begins to move us in the direction of not having to carry a weapon and not having the weapon have to carry us. And that's a really, really big step. How many of us have written any number of people off because they don't think or believe what we believe? Is that their entire life, or is that just a part of their life? And can we walk around that and see their humanity when we're not looking at just that? And so what we need to do for our own benefit is to show kindness towards others, because that friendliness, that kindness will eventually generate more for us than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. As you were saying that, I was reminded when I talked about tribes of tribe that I studied in anthropology called the Yanomami tribe. It's in the Guianas and northern Brazil, in that area. And our anthropologists went down and lived with them and studied them intensely. And one of the things they found interesting is there was another tribe. And again, these tribes usually don't trust each other very much because they might always want to come steal your women or whatever you have. And so they get together once a year. One tribe traipses all the way over to the other tribe. And what they do, the Yanomami tribe that was being visited had worked for days creating a feast, which was basically a big pot of porridge or soup. And what they did is meet, sit down, and share food together to feed the visitors. And of course, that's an old tradition within all human communities of honoring your visitors and your neighbors,
Breaking bread together.
breaking bread together. And back to Bob's dog story is that see, when they compare wolves and dogs now, they see that the wolves don't pay attention to human. They don't notice their facial expressions. They don't notice their tone of voice.
They can't read the signs. Yeah.
They're basically ignoring them. They might be sniffing out the food, but they're ignoring the humans. Our dogs read our facial expressions, the tones of our voices. They're very tuned in to us. And of course, that evolved over the years, but it started with the dogs. And so that is a very important thing for loving thy neighbor. And, we have to get over that business of not trusting the other, the stranger. I was telling Bob that I really, as a child, kids are mean. And so it was real hard for me to trust other kids in school or on the playground or whatever, because they were usually more interested in terrorizing and teasing you than being friendly to you. I was lucky if I could carve out one best friend that was safe. And supposedly my sister was safe, only she wasn't. she was mean and didn't like me hanging out with her and her friends. And so it's like I was drilled that you can always trust family. Not necessarily others, but you can trust family. But I couldn't really trust my sister because she wasn't. She
won't be
safe.
watching this, will she?
Probably not. But at any rate, so who do you trust? Who do you trust? And so if you grow up not trusting people in school and friends and whatnot, trusting that they won't hurt you, either physically or emotionally, who do you trust? You grow up sort of not trusting anybody, and you don't know your neighbors. You're not sure about them. And so it's very easy to isolate and just have, I trust my immediate family and that kind of thing. But what shifted for me, what really helped me be able to love a neighbor I know, a neighbor I don't know, was after I became a therapist and worked with so many people. And what I learned is that every single human being is fighting something, worried about something, struggling with something. It may be in their present, it may be in their past, it may be in their childhood, it may be in their future, but they all have something that is really heavy duty. And once I got that, I realized everybody, I don't care if they are a millionaire with yachts, I don't care what it is, they have something that's really bothering them. And therefore, they deserve my kindness, my care, my help if I can give it to them. And so once I realized that, it sort of made it easy for me to find everybody to be my neighbor. And I may be able to be of assistance, I may not. But I know that they are a human being struggling with something, just like me. And so it's easier to love them.
We have a tendency to watch people waiting for them to do something that will have us be able to distrust them for a good reason. And because of that,
Look
we're
for the
often,
evidence.
yeah, we're often not looking for the evidence for what we could admire, appreciate, and like about a person. So, and I think I may have shared this some time ago. I used to have a big audiophile collection and a big record collection. It was so big a record collection, I had a closet full of records. And so you'd open the closet door and there would be just shelves and shelves and shelves of records. Well, because I was an audiophile with very fine equipment, I had friends who would visit who'd want to listen to records. We used to listen to records back in the old days. And so,
I wonder if everybody knows what audiophile means.
yeah, it means you spend way too much money on high-end audio equipment,
Phile
stereos.
comes
Yeah,
from philios, which means love of.
yeah.
So love of audio.
I never loved it that much, but I could quit. Anyway, a friend came over and he went into the closet and he pulled out a record. And I noticed that when he pulled the record out, he slid it into his record sleeve. And he acted as if nothing had happened. And we listened to records. I didn't say a word about it. He came back the next week to listen to another record and the door was locked. And he went over to open it and it was locked. He didn't say anything. And so I unlocked it, got the record out and closed it again. And we listened to records. And about 3 weeks later, he said, I've noticed that for the last 3 weeks, you've locked the closet. What is up with that? I said, well, 3 weeks ago, I noticed that you took one of my records and slipped it in one of your sleeves. And I decided that probably you weren't safe with my records. He said, and you didn't throw me out or you didn't disown me as a friend? I said, no, I can trust you in a lot of areas, just not with my records. And you're a good friend. He said, I'll bring the record back. And I said, well, then we can unlock the closet. We continued to have a long and wonderful relationship, but it was an opportunity to see the weakness in a human being and know that we all have weakness, to see a flaw in a human being and not write the human being off. And in fact, over the long haul, that relationship got stronger and I enjoyed having a friend that enjoyed the same things that I did. We had many, many more things to share than what we didn't like or what we didn't share. And I guess the message in kindness is kindness benefits you no matter when you use it, no matter how you express it. It's good for you. It's healthy for you. It's good for your immune system.
We live in a condo unit, a 4-story condo unit that has 58 units. And it's the first time in our lives, our married lives, that we've lived in a condo. We've always had a home that has a yard and fence. You have distance from your neighbors. So here what we found is we made very good friends with our adjoining neighbors. We like them very much. We enjoy them. It's very nice. But unconsciously, I made the decision, I don't need to get to know anybody else. I'm busy. I work from my home. I just don't need to try to get to know all these people. I don't have anything in common with them. Why should I bother?
Isn't that an interesting statement that a lot of us often unconsciously make?
Yes. And then what I've realized is, especially during the pandemic and all the isolation, is that we need each other. We need people. We need community. We are meant to be together. People who are isolated and live all by themselves often go crazy. We really do need one another. And so I'm finding, as I'm reaching out and making an effort to speak to people and get to know them, the more I get to know them, the more I like them. And of course, I'm sure the more they like me, because I didn't say they like me. I say they like me more as we get to know one another. And so we need to realize that we need to love our neighbors for ourselves, not for their sake, for our sake.
If what we believe is that God is in all of us, then we have to be careful we don't exclude God. And we exclude God every time we exclude somebody, in particular when we exclude them for no particular reason other than it feels safer to us to do that. And so as we allow our world to get larger and to include more of God, we have a better opportunity to love God in all of its many different forms. Who was it? I can't think of her name now, the Indian nurse from India who said she was saving the poor people in India who were dying.
Oh, that's Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa, right? Yeah. She said, I serve God. I serve God in all of his many disguises.
That's right.
Yeah. And so what you could say is that every time I see somebody where I don't see God, it's because I'm not looking far enough, deep enough, and I'm not willing to understand that inside all of us, there is as much God in them as there is in me. If we understand that, it's really hard to write anybody off.
Right. No matter what their circumstances, no
Yeah.
matter what the color of their skin, no matter if we speak the same language, we can still be respectful and view them as important as we consider ourselves and part of God, like we are.
I started off talking about wolves, so I'm going to end with my piece on dogs, and which is I've had a lot of them. One of the things that a dog does when it's injured, if you go to touch it or you go to do anything to it, it will snap at you. It will try to bite you. And the reason is it's trying to protect its injured parts. Human beings do the same thing, only you can't see their injured parts.
Yeah.
And so when someone snaps at you, you can say, wow, there must be some injuries in there. It doesn't mean I have to say yes to the person biting me. It doesn't mean that I have to say it was nice to be snapped at. But it does mean that there's a compassion within you that says, there's an injury in there that you're protecting because you don't want any more hurt. And I understand that.
Right. You were talking about seeing God in everyone, and I wanted to share a quote by Ernest Holmes.
That was a beautiful quote.
And this is in the book called The Essential, Ernest Holmes. It says, "Find the world to be good. Every person is an evolving soul. Let your mind be tempered with that human wisdom which rejects the lie, which separates the wheat from the chaff, but in all kindness, sympathy, and compassion." So, we use that term to separate the wheat from the chaff, meaning the wheat is the valuable part, or the valuable humans, the chaff we throw away. That part of the hull that we don't want to eat. And so we need to do that with our neighbors, and not, if we're separating wheat from chaff, we don't want to say, well, these we keep, these we throw away.
That's an interesting metaphor too. We just recently saw a special, a nature special, and they were showing 1 million acres of almonds. The almonds were cultivated. The almonds had value. The almonds were worth something. Every single almond had a dollar value connected to it. But the almonds actually were having trouble because they didn't have anything else growing near them that it could cross-pollinate, or they could allow the bees to pollinate when the almonds were all done. They brought in weeds.
When the almond flowers were
then the bees would be, what do we do now? So they planted rows and rows and rows of what we would call weeds. They were flowers, but they were weeds. They were what we normally get rid of. What was interesting to me metaphorically is that the almonds could not survive without the weeds. The weeds actually could survive quite well without the almonds. And we often believe that we don't need any weeds, or we call things weeds rather than, well, those are magnificent flowers that have a different name, or that have a different nature, or have a different reason, and we don't necessarily understand their reason. But what we know is that they're important and valuable. There are no extra plants. There are no extra people. There's no extra God. There's as much God in all of us.
And all of the world religions have this law of love one another in some way or another. This is from a book called See No Stranger by Valerie Kaur. It says, "The call to love beyond our own flesh and blood is ancient. It echoes down to us on the lips of indigenous leaders, spiritual teachers, and social reformers through the centuries. Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, which is a group of Islamic mystics, called us to see no stranger. Buddha, to practice unending compassion. Abraham, to open our tent to all. Jesus, to love our neighbor. Mohammed, to take in the orphan. They all expanded the circle of who counts as one of us, and therefore who is worthy of our love and concern."
That's beautiful. That's a perfect place to end.
And it's about time too, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. I think we're gonna share screen here. Where's share screen? Oh, here we are. And we'd like to take a couple of minutes just to speak to supporting the center as best you can, however you can, and allowing it to support you. Not only are we asking you to invest your money and your time and energy to our center, but we're also asking you to call us, connect with us, and let us know when we can serve you. We have
Absolutely.
practitioners, and our practitioners would love to do what we call prayer treatment, which is our form of prayer for you to help you through whatever you might be going through. We have an essential role in that, and our practitioners take that very seriously. And so we'd like to invite you to be a part of that. So we're going to start off by asking you to look at our, I'll have Judith walk us through this.
Yes, let's say our offertory affirmation. And where you may give is by going to our website, the cslpalmbeaches.org. And there you will see a button at the top that says ways to give. But at any rate, this is our affirmation that we say as we prepare to give our money to the center. And let's say it together. My investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And so it is.
And I'm going to end the share screen. Oh. And stop share. There we go. And we're going to end with a.
Have you ended you haven't stopped the recording? No. Well, you want to close with a closing prayer?
Yeah. So let's do that together and know that together there is only one source for good. That one source is that we call God, we call divine intelligence, we call Jesus, we call Buddha, we call whatever we call it. There's a source for good that flows through each of us, and we say yes to that. We say yes to that, opening us up to trust each other in a way that allows us to be friends with, to be friendly towards, to be kind towards everyone and everything that we meet. Knowing that this is already done in the mind of God and done in the mind of our consciousness, we say yes and we say thank you, and we know together it is done, and so it is.
So it is. Thank you.